Hello again. That was a quick turnover. This is Ollie
Hello.
Hutson. He is head kitchen gardener covering all of the pig hotels, and he is going to tell us what it takes to make a pig kitchen garden. So over to you, Ollie.
Cool, thank you. Cool, hi, I'm Ollie Hutson. I am the group head kitchen gardener for the Pig Hotel Group, Homegrown Hotels. As everyone who's aware of the pig or not aware, yeah, cool. Good, lots of people, that's cool. So for anyone who's not aware, we're a small collection of hotels. We've been going for about just under 15 years now. We started in the New Forest in 2011 in a village called Brockenhurst, the first one of our properties, and we've slowly sort of expanded to a collection of 8 hotels over the following years. So yeah, in 2014 we expanded. We opened a pig near Bath, which is the local property to here, and that's where I first met Sarah, maid from Yo Valley, and you know it's probably the start of this sort of connection that's led to me being here today. And obviously, thank you very much. They've done an absolutely amazing job with this festival. They've gone above and beyond. I'm really amazed at what they've achieved. Cool, so we're now a collection of 8 hotels from Padstow to Canterbury and as far north up to just a village called Barnsley, which is just near Cirencester in the Cotswolds. The property there is called the Pig in the Cotswolds, and it is Rosemary Veary's old house, Barnsley House. So lovely to get stuck into some sort of historic gardens there, and really do justice to some great gardeners from the past, which is cool. My journey, my father's family business is hospitality, hotels, and thinking I was cool as a teenager, I thought, now I'm going to get away from the family business, I'm going to go to agricultural college and, sort of strike out on my own and everything. And as happens in the sort of mafia, you just sort of slowly get sort of pulled back in. And, yeah, here we are, 15 years working in hospitality as a gardener now. But no, so I went to Sparsholt College near Winchester. I studied countryside management there. And I think that's really influenced my sort of outlook on gardening and kitchen gardening, with strong sort of focus on sort of ecology and conservation, particularly fond of sort of trees and woodland management as well. So I try and incorporate these elements into the gardens as I grow them. In some ways, I'm a confused horticulturalist. I'm not totally sure whether I'm a agriculturally minded horticulturalist or a horticulturally minded agriculturalist, but somewhere in between. I think of my gardens as miniature field systems in the way we sort of grow the crops. Cool. The concept of the pig is all about our sort of 25-mile menu, so I should probably flick the slides on. I'm not used to doing the slideshows. We have a 25-mile menu, we call it, and it's where we try and source 95% of our ingredients within 25 miles of our hotels, whether it's foraged in a local area or whether it's grown on site, and anything we can't do, yes, it's sort of within that 25-mile radius. There's a few outliers there, I don't know, vanilla, coffee, sugar. I think as punters, you guys would probably sort of not be too happy if we didn't have those kind of things as elements in the menu. So we sort of break our own rules a little bit for that purpose. And it's great, getting to incorporate my sort of love of the countryside and foraging into my kitchen gardening as well. I like doing some mixed salads, incorporating some foraged sort of bits and bobs. I mean, I've just been around just this morning in the car park area from about, I don't know, say 20 metres or so of hedgerow and field, and I found some yarrow, grows in most lawns and stuff. It's, lovely stuff, great in a salad. You wouldn't want a whole bowl of it, but it's, as many sort of elements as possible. And we've got, obviously dandelion leaves. It's just a wild chicory, isn't it? one thing you can do, and you may have seen people doing it, is cut your dandelions right back, put a little saucer over it, let it grow back, and you've got sort of forced dandelion shoots, almost like sort of forced chicory that the French would be growing. Old favourites, obviously some blackberries there. You might be thinking, how does that go into a salad? I'd be thinking of it as a dressing, make a reduction or something, and, sort of add a sweetness or a tartness to sort of to jazz up that salad. And it's a bit ropey, that, sorry, but that's some greater plantain. I mean, there's two sort of common species of plantain, both edible, both great in a salad. So yeah, try and incorporate those. Lots of things are edible. Not everything is palatable or worth harvesting, really. I mean, a good example here, and I said I'm a tree lover, obviously, but acorns. I love trees. I love oak. I've got an acorn on my hand. But people make acorn flour. You consume more calories making the flour than you actually get from it. You have to sort of bake them a few times, grind them, maybe bake them some more, and everything. It's a lovely story, but not everything is worth doing. You can make some wine out of the young oak leaves. That's a really sort of nice thing you can do. I think the coppicer Ben Law, I believe, has a recipe in one of his books. Cool. What's on my next slide? That's our 25-mile menus. What makes a pig kitchen garden, and what kind of sets it apart from other kitchen gardens? I think probably it's best to say first what with being at sort of Yo Valley, we are organically managed. We are not organically certified. We follow organic principles, but we're not a soil association garden. We are B Corp now, which is a lovely sort of sustainability story. But we're not soil association. When we take on these new properties, I get taken to these amazing sort of stately homes or listed buildings or collections of farm buildings, it might be, that will one day be a pig hotel. And I sort of walk around the site and they're like, oh, where do we want the kitchen garden? And there's so many elements to what we kind of do. It's about placement of these things. So first of all, we need to know where the restaurant is, and I need to know where the kitchen is, so we can have an easy supply route to get into the kitchens. There's a lot of kind of moving parts with finding the correct location. I mean, and that's even before you start looking at the sort of topography of the sites and how best you can divide a space into a sort of relatively easy to manage kitchen garden space. We operate a crop rotation system, 4-bed crop rotation system. The 4 elements that we use are, I'm going to get it wrong here, aren't I? Alliums, so the alliums go in, they sort of, the nature of them, they kind of break the soil up a little bit, they leave those sort of fibrous roots in. Leeks are great for doing that. And then they'll be closely followed the following year by legumes and roots is our next element of the rotation. That nicely broken up soil tends to be good for growing sort of root veg, your carrots and parsnips and salsify and scorzonera and bits like that. And the legumes will obviously be fixing nitrogen in the soil throughout that time. Our next element would be the brassicas, so really hungry plants. So we get them in after all the legumes, and you get a great crop of brassicas off there. And the final part of a rotation is obviously the most technical. That is mixed, which is basically everything that doesn't really fit into the other categories. Like all rules are meant to be broken. So we allow a little bit of flex between these, particularly brassicas encroaching into other areas. Radishes and turnips, really useful kind of catch-up crops if you've got a crop failure or crops are ending too early, or some of the salady brassicas as well. I don't really class them as a brassica in terms of the crop rotation. That would be things like your rockets and mustards and bits like that. Other elements I look at when given these spaces to manage are things like spaces for a fruit cage. I mean, we have fruit cages at all properties, mainly for growing soft fruit. So, I mean, probably, I don't know, 10 or so varieties at each property. I've brought along with me some of these. I mean, so it's not very easy to see. These are Chilean guava, Ugni Mullinae. I don't know if anyone's grown them before. They are great fun. So the joy of growing the Chilean guava is they fruit months after everything else has finished fruiting. So it's a mast year this year, so everything's a little bit early, and obviously the summer we had, I think, you know, a lot of things just want it to end and enter the fruit and go into the winter. So these are about a month earlier than they usually would be. They're ripening now about the end of September. They'd normally be about the end of October into the beginning of November. They have a taste like tropical fruit. It's like a cross between strawberry and pineapple. So aromatic. I mean, by all means, after the talk, I'll come and have a look at them and everything. And if we don't have time here, I'll be over in the bookstall tent. We could have all these with me there as well. The joy of biting into one of these little tropical sort of, I don't know, just amazingness is, you know, in a frosty morning, everything, you just would not expect that flavour. It's really cool. One thing I find quite amusing about them is in every sort of gardening book you see, there seems to be two facts, which, as far as I can tell, everyone's kind of plagiarised off everyone else. I don't know who came up with it originally, but the first fact is it was Queen Victoria's favourite fruit. Apparently, no idea how to prove that one. And the other one is they make a great alternative to blueberries in a blueberry muffin. Again, it must be that everyone just reads that fact and parrots it. I certainly have when I've spoken to people. So that's the fruit cages. We also look at greenhouses, so we're very lucky, especially at the Pignair Bath, just down the road, to have inherited some lovely traditional sort of early 20th century greenhouses, and we have traditional historic greenhouses at sort of 3 of our properties, 3 of our 8 hotels. When we don't have that, we have a great brand partnership with a company called Alatex, who I'm sure a lot of people know. Alatex are our oldest brand partner. We've been working with them for 15 years or so now. Fantastic greenhouses. I mean, they have a price tag that I wouldn't be able to afford if I wasn't having them at work. But you sort of get what you pay for with them. You know, aluminium construction, and they last forever. I mean, my oldest one at work is 15 years old, and we've hardly had to do any sort of maintenance to it apart from, I think maybe a bird flew into a pane of glass once, so that's about it. We also grow under protection in polytunnels. The greenhouses make great showcases of our product, but the polytunnels are the real sort of workhorses of growing. I mean, during the summer, we probably, say a 30 by 14 foot polytunnel, we fit best part 200 tomato plants in one of those. And I'd say, the height of the summer, so July, August, you'd be taking, I don't know, 5 to 8 kilos a day out of tomatoes out of those greenhouses, polytunnels. They can be super productive if you want to. I buy all my Solanaceae seed from Sea Spring Seeds down in Bridport. What they don't know about the Solanaceae family, tomatoes and chilies and everything, just isn't worth knowing. That'd be my recommendation there for Sea Spring Seeds. Herb gardens, another element. I'm a massive sort of herb fan. I love finding unusual crops, maybe ones which are the same but different to things that you know. I mean, a fantastic example that I have here. I harvested it this morning. It's a little bit tired now. This is lemon verbena. Everyone knows lemon verbena. Aloysia citrinata. beautiful scent of that kind of sherbet lemon sweets. It makes one of my favourite herbal hot infusions, herbal teas around. It's a mild muscle relaxant, so if you get sort of bad back when you're gardening, lemon verbena tea is very good. This, however, is Aloysia polystachya, and it's also known as white brush. It's obviously same genus. It's a cousin of lemon verbena, but it's got a strong mint scent to it, and it's really unusual. I mean, most of your naturally occurring kind of mint scents in nature would be a very sort of pepperminty, sort of a sharp mint kind of taste or scent to it, whereas this is spearminty. It's got a strong sort of toothpastey kind of aroma. It can be a little bit difficult to use in the kitchen because of the toothpastiness, so you need to be a little bit sort of inventive. I can actually, I've got quite a lot that I can pass that around if people would like to. There you go. Would like to have a little smell of that. I think it's amazing stuff. I mean, I first saw it at Jacka's, which is just north of here. She was a big fan of it. It's quite difficult to use, so the bar tend to like using it quite a lot, and we use it on our sort of petit fours as well. So we make kind of little sort of sweets for after dinner for people. There you go. Sorry. That's called white brush, Aloysia polystachya, or polystachya maybe. Yeah, finding really interesting herbs is fascinating. I've got another one here. Clearly, a rosemary. Everyone knows rosemary, yeah. This is rosemary green ginger. It's a ginger-scented rosemary. It's really interesting, especially August, September, when it's like really oily and you really get that sort of that gingery sort of scent to it. It's absolutely fantastic. I like to infuse it in a gin and make a ginger rosemary Collins. It's a fantastic drink, really refreshing during the summer. Again, the kitchen love it as well. The pastry department especially, they've made sort of panna cottas with it, which have been lovely. Not necessarily the rosemary you're going to put on your roast lamb. For what it's worth, I'd use Miss Jessop's. I think that's the most aromatic variety of rosemary, and it's a very delicate sort of leaf, so not too tough if you end up sort of getting one in your mouth when you're eating. And finally, this one's Myrtissima maritima. I don't know if anyone's seen that before. Oyster plant is also known as oyster leaf. It's got a strong taste of sort of oysters. It makes a fantastic, really cool garnish on like seafood dishes. Very unusual. Or just tossed through a salad in the same way that I said about the sort of foraged herbs earlier. The oyster plant can be great in that sort of sense as well. I find it quite interesting. It's almost got a sort of slightly succulent-y texture to the bite when you bite into it. It's kind of unusual because it grows in the most extremes of northerly areas. It grows around the sort of northern coasts of Greenland and Scandinavia and northern Scotland and the Isles and everything like that. So it's very unusual. As I said, if people want to come up and have a taste or a smell of any of these afterwards, we can definitely do that. Right, what else am I talking about? We grow a lot of mushrooms at the hotels as well. So we started growing mushrooms back in 2016. We took over a Coombe House Hotel down near Honiton, and amazing walled garden there. It's sort of slightly fallen into decline, and again we'd inherited these beautiful greenhouses. And behind one of the greenhouses, we found the old sort of boiler room, and it was this sort of damp, dark, kind of dingy space where we were like, what can we do with that? We don't want that as our office or anything like that. So we came up with this idea. We thought, mushrooms, they love it. And then we started sort of scratching the surface and going down that rabbit hole. And the more we learned, you need a sort of sterile, temperature-controlled, humidity-controlled, sort of lighting-controlled space. But, yeah, we were too deep down that rabbit hole at the point. So we ended up having to build a room within a room, essentially, to grow our mushrooms in. We now have these mushroom houses at all of our properties, we mainly grow oyster mushrooms. They're the most versatile for the chefs to use. We grow pink and gold oysters during the summer, and sort of mainly grey oysters over the sort of cooler months. We also grow shiitake, king oyster, lion's mane. But they're slightly less regular, and we sort of grow them to order a little bit more from the chefs. A real passion of mine over the last sort of few years has been, again, incorporating my sort of passion for the countryside is creating foraging hedges. So the concept of these hedges is they're hedges where every plant within those hedges will produce an edible fruit or nut. So I mean a collection of probably up to about a dozen or so species. They're slightly different at each property, depending on how sort of close to the coast we are, or what sort of soils, or what's sort of indigenous to the area. Things like hazel, that we both Corylus avellana and Corylus maxima we put in there. Obviously hawthorn and blackthorn. Rosa canina, the dog rose, blackberries. I mean, loads of things. Not the most radical selection of plants, but it's really cool to just know that anything you take from that hedge, you'll be able to make a wicked jelly or jam at some point. But you're not going to poison anyone by taking stuff out of it. The one learning I have taken from doing those is elder will outcompete everything else. It grows twice as fast. So if you are thinking of starting an edible hedge, I'd recommend thinking about the sort of elder placement quite well. Maybe doing them in little clumps every so often along the hedge, as opposed to every half a dozen plants or so, because they will outcompete their neighbours. Cool. We also have quite extensive sort of apiaries on site. Across the group, we have around about 100 or so hives now, producing a couple of tons of honey every year, which is a project we're kind of very passionate about and have been ramping up a little bit over the last few years. I'm particularly biased. My wife is our sort of group apiarist who's responsible for all the sort of honey production, and I'm very proud of her. She also involves our children. We get them down to the apiaries as well. With they're only 7 and 8, but they've got their little bee suits they wear and look into the hives. It's a shameless plug, but if you happen to be down the bookstall later and looked at the big book, there's a lovely picture of Joe and our daughter Stephanie at the hives, just messing around, blowing the smoker at each other and stuff. But how do we plan our kitchen gardens? I suppose that's how we build them, and the elements we're looking for when we build them. But working with chefs is a whole different ballgame from just having an allotment. I mean, as I said earlier, I've lived best part of 40 years or so in and around hotels, so I speak chef reasonably well, but it's an acquired kind of tongue to be able to speak to them. You need to sell things to them sometimes, and sell it to them as, it's not the most difficult route possible. We can do this. This is really unusual. This has got some wow factor. That's why we're looking for those punchy flavours and unusual scents that we discussed earlier. So what we do at the end of every growing season, our head chef and our respective head kitchen gardener will meet up, and they'll basically go through everything that's been grown in that garden that year. And the chef's only allowed to say 4 things. They're only allowed to say more, less, the same, or not at all. If you any other kind of tangents, and that meeting will last 3 weeks rather than an hour. At that stage of our planning, that's all we kind of say. We then translate that onto a sort of great big sort of garden and sowing plans on Microsoft Excel. I'm sad to say these days I probably do more of my gardening on Excel than in the soil, at work at least. And then we sort of we have a nursery at head office where we grow sort of seeds to order for the for supplying the gardens with the seedlings as they've kind of requested. So it's a very collaborative effort with the chefs. And then once those things are planted, we then, we will walk, the respective head gardener and head chef will probably walk around the garden, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 times a week. Basically every single day that they're both on shift together, they will touch base and talk about, what have the boys been taking too much of? What haven't they taken enough of? What's nearly finished? What's coming up next? And the chefs, the information they'll give back to us is, what they're using for on the menu, what their plans are, how they can think outside the box a little bit. So it's a really exciting kind of collaborative effort. And when you've sort of come through the more sort of horticultural or allotment sort of route, it's quite nice to speak to these guys who sort of understand the sort of science of food production to assist us in knowing what we're growing for. I mean, I've had head gardeners who've grown kohlrabies, and they've never actually seen a kohlrabi before as a fruit. So as a vegetable, and they'll let it grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. And the head chefs will say, like, hey, why didn't I have that 3 weeks ago? They're the size of footballs now. And some of the gardeners just don't. They've never seen them before. They don't know. I mean, I remember probably my first week in my career, I was told to go and collect the Cavolo Nero seedlings before from the polytunnel, and I'd never seen a Cavolo Nero as a seedling. And very embarrassing moment with the fellow who was training me at the time. But it's forgotten about now. It's forgiven. We grow in really finite spaces at the hotels, so it's very important to maximise every kind of square metre, every square foot of the gardens. We avoid kind of what I'd regard as sort of one-hit wonder crops. Potatoes, great example of that. We love potatoes. We serve them in the restaurants, but we tend to not grow them in the gardens. They sit there for a long time, and once they're gone, they're gone. We grow a lot of other kind of solanaceae that I mentioned earlier, so that, again, the tomato and the pepper family. We don't want to kind of jeopardise the higher value solanaceae by getting blight on what we consider a kind of lower value crop. Globe artichokes, another one, really great crop, but you can fill a great big space with them and only get, a couple of dozen sort of fruits off them or flower heads off them. So it's not really worth it for us. They look fantastic as plants until they don't, and they look terrible. We don't really want something occupying a large space that looks terrible for sort of 3 or 4 months of the year. We also try and harvest as many parts of each plant just to maximise that space. So, Cavolo Nero I mentioned earlier. What I like to do, what's the time of year? Kind of March, April sort of time, just as the sort of apical sort of flower head starts to form on the Cavolo Neros. Most of the old boys, the allotment, would be, chucking them out at that time of year and sticking them on the compost. And they'll see mine there, have a bit of a grumble that I've sort of let my allotment go to shit and all that sort of stuff. But what I do is I nip the apical bud out of there and I allow it to sort of form florets at the side in the same way you would a sprouting broccoli, for instance. And Cavolo Nero shoots, Cavolo Nero sprouting broccoli, if you will. It's much nicer than any other kind of sprouting broccoli I've ever grown. Please try it if you grow Cavolo or any kale for that matter. There's still crop left when you think it's finished. So give it a go next year. And one of the other multi-crop plants we grow would be the nasturtiums. I think probably most people would grow nasturtiums in their gardens. They're fantastic plants, but people might not be aware of all the uses for them. I mean, the large leaves of the nasturtiums, again, really good, just sliced up or chiffonaded up in a kind of salad, or blitzed up as a pesto, nice spicy peppery pesto you can make out of them. The small, tiny little baby leaves as a garnish, or again, just mix for a salad. There's a variety called blue pepe I particularly like for those. The small leaves are a very dark green kind of leaf, but around the rim, the edge of the leaf, it's a light dark purple colour. They look really beautiful and very striking on a plate. I mean, maybe of something like a dark venison or something like that. These leaves look perfect. You've got the flowers on the plant as well. The flowers is probably the first edible flower I was aware of when I was growing up. Going into my parents' garden and nicking a peppery flower and eating it off the plants. And then obviously the seed pods as well. We harvest those and we pickle them and use them as a alternative to capers, a local within 25 mile or 0 mile alternative to capers. The final use for a nasturtium is the best one, though. They're a sacrificial plant. So, halfway through the summer, they'll be absolutely riddled with all the cabbage white caterpillars, black fly, everything. At that point, stick them in a bin bag and chuck them in the bin and get rid of them. And you'll find you'll have so much seed stock in the soil where they've self-seeded themselves. They'll be back again in a few weeks. So, there's no kind of harm in doing it. If you've got enough space, you could stagger or successionally take them out in order to continue cropping them through that broad whilst they're kind of regenerating. I did have one other multi-cropping plant, actually, I'd like to tell you about. Broad beans, I think, fairly standard plant, relatively boring, people think, in the garden. I think they're good. I grow multiple crops of broad beans. I get a nice early one in, and I sow kind of late October, early November. That would always be aqua dulce. That variety is bulletproof. It will go through the winter. I think I've only had them knocked out by the frost once, and that's when we had 10 continuous days of minus figures, and that was the only time I've really had aqua dulces taken out. And I sow again in kind of January time. The purpose of the ones I sow in January is different. I'm not aiming for beans with those plants. I'm treating them much more like a green manure. I'm allowing them to grow a little bit. I'm harvesting the leaves as salad leaves. I don't know, has anyone eaten broad bean leaves for salads? They're amazing. They're really cool. They've got a strong pea-like flavour, P-E-A, flavour, and really nice in it, really nice in the salad. I remember one of my favourite kitchen garden salads that I've kind of made. I'm not a great chef, I must admit, but using broad bean leaves, some broad beans, some peas, a little bit of goat's cheese, and I made a reduction out of some grapefruit mint, which is arguably my favourite mint. I don't know, it probably changes. If you ask me tomorrow, it'd be a different one. But grapefruit mint's a really good one. And that salad was absolutely banging. That was really good. Those broad bean leaves. The other crop you get off them are the broad bean flowers. If you put the crimson flowered ones in, I mean, the beans are rubbish from crimson flowered broad beans. Don't even bother, just harvest the flowers. And then when you finish, cut them off at the base. Dig them into the soil. They're green manure. You're maximising your space, in a finite space in a garden. I've gone so off-piste with the slideshow. I don't know. Don't know what to click through now. Lovely photo of Andy there doing some harvesting, and I was just going through some of the varieties or cultivars that maybe might have an anecdote or a story, or you might not have heard of. So, agretti, a real favourite of ours. We've grown agretti since kind of the year dot. It's an Italian vegetable. We tend to treat it as a samphire substitute. It's got a texture very similar to marsh samphire. And it's great pickled. It's great sort of steamed as a green, buttered. Yeah, really good in those senses. Unless you're Italian, they just, I mean, to be honest, like everything else, they eat it raw. They just toss it up in olive oil, lemon juice, black pepper, kind of Bob's your uncle. And yeah, agretti, fantastic. Weird little fact, I'm by no means a chemist, so I sort of understand the story, but don't understand the why this happens. But when you burn agretti, it produces a very fine ash called soda ash, hence the name Sal Sola soda. During the Renaissance, I believe it was Florence that was very famed for the clarity of its glass. And somehow, this is the bit I don't understand, somehow they used the very fine soda ash in the glass-making process in order to create this clear glass. But yeah, I mean, I can't tell you any more about it because I'm not a chemist, I'm sorry. Beetroot, absolute classic. There's great varieties. I mean, the one in the centre of that picture, the Chioggia beetroot, or to the chefs, the candy stripe beetroot. I don't like calling that. I think it's just a bit lazy. I think it's how they have suppliers kind of market it to chefs to make it sound more appealing. No, that's a really fun one. Probably the fastest growing beetroot. If you want a quick crop of beetroot, I'd definitely be growing Chioggias. Lovely sort of sweet taste to that. The one next to it, the golden one, is a variety called Boldor. They don't get as big, but it's sort of, yeah, small golden beetroot, you know, roasted. If you've got sort of, you know, wood oven or anything like that, it's really, yeah, they really take on that sort of woody flavour. The white beetroots, don't even bother with them, they're animal fodder. And the one on the right there, it's difficult to see, that is actually a bull's blood. You'd see the leaves are very sort of coppery red, slightly purpley, sort of a ferrous colour to them. So that's quite a cool variety. But the real red beet that I like to grow are the cylindrical ones, varieties such as Cylindra. And in the spectrum of beetroot kind of flavours, it goes from the very sweet that you would have seen with the Chioggias at first to the very kind of earthy sort of beetroots, which the sort of more cylindrical, elongated beetroots tend to have more of an earthier flavour to them. Yeah, I can highly recommend those ones. They'd be my favourites to grow. My wife is Polish. We go through quite a lot of beetroot in our house. But and again, chard, it is beetroot, pretty much. It's, yeah, Beta vulgaris again. It's just been cultivated for its stems and its leaves rather than its roots. So really cool. I mean, the star of the show in the centre of that image is a variety called peppermint chard. And again, it has that sort of sweet shop colour palette there, that sort of pink and white going up the stems. It's really nice. I mean, there's loads of different chard varieties, loads of single varieties you can grow. I kind of like just growing the Bright Lights mix, which kind of has all of them in. I think, you know, you just get a nice sort of rainbow chard mix from your bed then. Yeah, really, really cool crop. Nice. Fennels, again, you can get loads of crops off a fennel. The leaves are edible, obviously the bulbs. I like to direct sow them, probably about an inch or so apart as I direct sow them, and I've thinned them out at different stages. So the first thinning, I will take, you know, every other one out, and it would be like a little feather. It almost looked like a stick of yarrow, like we looked at earlier. Yeah, that is yarrow, not fennel, but not dissimilar to that. I then give it another few weeks, and I would harvest the baby fennels. So that's probably, you know, when they're sort of a couple of inches wide in the bulbs. And again, just taking out alternate ones. And they're really delicate. Yeah, really sort of delicate sort of taste to them. you can cook them lightly. You can serve them in salads, and then the last ones you grow will be your sort of main crops, the ones left over. I mean, probably my favourite salad to make out of them would be to slice it really finely on like a mandolin, cover it in lemon juice, mix it together with cranberries and dill and a little bit of sort of fried halloumi, and that's a really delicious sort of fennel and cranberry and halloumi salad. I'm going to have to go reasonably quickly. I think I'm waffling too much. Kalettes, kind of hybrid of Brussels sprouts and curly kale. I encourage lots of people to grow these. They're really kind of funky. They taste, well, I mean, I don't mind Brussels sprouts, but these guys taste better than their contentious cousins, if you will. They grow in the same way as the Brussels, but they sort of produce almost these little loose sprouts, as you can see, almost like mini cabbages up the stem. But yeah, really, really delicious. Grow them, in season, kind of November until January, February sort of time. Winter squash. I haven't brought any along with me, although some have been provided here. Often I'm asked my favourite crop. It's getting close to being my favourite crop, winter squashes. I love the story. There's kind of three main species of winter squashes. You get your cucurbita pepos, your cucurbita maximas, and your cucurbita machatas. They all cure for different times to kind of break down the starches and get the best of the flavour out of them. The pepos, you want to cure them for probably 1 to 2 months, and that's your little sort of onion squashes, uchikiri kiri, and varieties like that. Cucurbita maximas, these would be cucurbita maximas here, sort of classic sort of crown prince squashes, 2 to 4 months curing, and they're the best. They taste amazing. Harvest them in kind of September and be eating them around Christmas time. And then the cucurbita machatas, I mean, they last forever. I mean, you could probably eat them a year after harvest. They're not as tasty as the other two, but, the longevity of them gives them their sort of versatility in the larder, or the garden, I suppose. Crones, Stachys affinis, they look like a bunch of widgety grubs. They are a member of the Lamiaceae family, same as the mints and thymes and rosemaries. To bite into one, they taste almost like they have a texture almost like a water chestnut you might get in a sort of, stir fry in a Chinese restaurant. Really sort of nutty, sweet, sort of crunchy taste. The gardeners hate me for getting them to grow them because you have to claw through the soil with your bare hands in kind of January, February to get them out, and it is not a pleasant experience. But it is kind of worth it for the end product. There's some of our oyster mushrooms that I mentioned earlier. We discussed briefly the edible flowers that we grow. A whole range of edible flowers. I did bring along some electric daisies today. I don't know if anyone's ever tried them. They're quite exciting. If anyone wants to have a go with one at some point, they are more than welcome to pop up and try one at some point. Lemon verbena we spoke about briefly with the oyster plant. It's a bit of further reading, really. Obviously, it's a more shameless plugging there. We've produced 2 books as the Pigs, and I'm a collaborator rather than an author. Fantastic. They're both for sale in the bookshop. If you want me to chat to you about them or anything, or sign any of them, I'll be there straight after this talk. A great big Bible of vegetables, herbs and fruit there, by people like sort of Jacka and Bob and all these guys, these, titans of the sort of allotment world. Jacka, again, her complete herb book, taught me so much in my early career. And two really inspiring books. Taste of the Unexpected by Mark Diacono, who will be here on Saturday, I believe, hopefully, get that right. Definitely go and see him if you're here. He's fantastic. And Grow for Flavour by James Wong. Again, thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. So I think we've got time for 2 questions really quickly, 1 or 2. Oh, okay, brilliant. Coming this way.
Got to try and restrict myself to one question then. Which one shall I go for? Would you have any poultry roaming? Do you produce any? Do you have any meat?
So we have animals on site. We have chickens and quail at all properties for egg production in terms of poultry. Obviously we've got pigs. Depending on which site you're at, we might have ducks, we might have sheep. And at the pig near Bath, we're really lucky we inherited a deer park. So we've got a herd of probably 100 odd fallow deer up there. So 0 mile venison is delicious as well.
That just leads on to how then do you, you're saying about them being enclosed most of the gardens. What's the best, how are you keeping the deer out?
They're a semi-wild herd. They're enclosed in a deer park behind a 8-foot deer fence. That's probably the most effective thing for stopping deer, that or a rifle, but yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
When you said about the chefs, you only give them like 4 answers to the question.
Yeah.
Is it then your job to kind of scurry around and look for really nice varieties? Like, you have so much knowledge about which is the tastiest variety. Does it ever come from chefs suggesting things to you, or do you always find the tastiest things to grow?
It's constant collaboration, really. I mean, I've sort of hammered up a little bit maybe by saying we restrict them to just those 4 phrases. It'd be a pretty dry meeting if they were only ever saying that. But no, we collaborate. We tend to suggest varieties. We find unusual things that we want to try. They don't have time to be looking through these seed catalogues. So that's what we do.
Thank
Cool.
you, Ollie. Thank you
Cheers.
so much. And thank you all for coming for the very first day of the very first Joe Valley Organic Garden Festival. Thank you.
Thank you for having
Ollie.
me.
Thank
Cheers.
you. Round of applause.